James Wilson stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the thick white beard that now covered his dark skin. At 42 years old, this elementary school teacher had never imagined himself playing Santa Claus, but life had a way of presenting unexpected opportunities. "You sure about this, Dad?" asked his teenage daughter Zoe from the doorway of their small apartment bathroom. Her school books were piled high on the dining table where she had been studying. "I'm sure." James nodded, his voice deeper than usual as he practiced his ho ho ho. The sound echoed against the bathroom tiles. "The extra money will help with your college fund. Besides, it might be fun." The call had come just yesterday, that Oak Ridge Mall's regular Santa had fallen ill with pneumonia. The holiday season was in full swing, and children were already lining up to see a Santa who wasn't there. James had met the mall manager, Diane, at a school fundraiser earlier that year, and she remembered his warm laugh and natural way with children. When Diane called him, desperation clear in her voice, James hesitated only briefly before accepting. The temporary job paid well, and Zoe's college applications were due next year. Every extra dollar counted. "Well, you look the part," Zoe smiled, raising her phone to snap a photo. "Except for, you know." James knew what she meant. In all the movies, all the shopping centers, all the Christmas cards, Santa was always white. Always. "Maybe it's time for something different," James said, turning to face his daughter fully. "Santa is about giving, kindness, and joy. That doesn't have a color." The next morning, James arrived at the mall an hour early. The small dressing room behind Santa's workshop was cramped but private. He carefully put on each piece of the costume: the red pants with black belt, the matching jacket with white trim, the shiny black boots. Lastly came the hat and the beard, which he secured carefully. Looking in the mirror, he saw Santa different perhaps, but Santa nonetheless. Diane knocked softly before entering. Her eyes widened slightly before a genuine smile spread across her face. "James, you look perfect," she exclaimed. "The children are already waiting." "Are you sure about this?" James asked, suddenly feeling nervous. "I mean, I'm not exactly traditional." Diane's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Look, I won't lie to you. There might be some people who question our choice, but Christmas is about what's inside, not outside. You have the biggest heart of anyone I know. That's what matters." When James took his seat on the large red chair at the center of the Winter Wonderland display, he felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. The first children approached cautiously, some staring with curiosity. But when James spoke, his deep, friendly voice asking what they wanted for Christmas, their faces lit up. A small boy named Tyler was first. "Santa, can I get a robot dog? My mom won't let me have a real one because of allergies." James laughed warmly. "Well, Tyler, I'll see what I can do. Have you been good this year?" The boy nodded enthusiastically, then whispered, "My friend Charlie says you're not the real Santa because you look different. But I think you're just magic and can change how you look." James felt his heart swell as he whispered back, "That's very smart of you, Tyler. The magic of Christmas takes many forms." As the morning continued, James found his rhythm. He listened to each child with genuine interest, made them laugh, and captured the wonder of the season in each interaction. Parents smiled as they watched, many thanking him warmly. By lunchtime, the word had spread through the mall. There was something special about this year's Santa. Something real and kind and magical. The line grew longer, and James Wilson knew he had made the right decision. The second day of James Wilson's time as the Oak Ridge Mall Santa brought even more children than the first. Word had spread quickly through the small town that there was something special about this year's Santa. By 10 in the morning, the line stretched past 3 stores. "I've never seen it like this," said Maria, the elf photographer who had worked the Santa booth for 5 years. She adjusted her pointed green hat and checked her camera settings. "You're good with them. Really good." James smiled beneath his fluffy white beard. Teaching 3rd grade has its advantages. A little girl with braids like his daughter Zoe used to wear approached the big red chair. She couldn't have been more than 4, and she twisted the edge of her red dress nervously. "Hello there," James said softly, his voice warm and gentle. "Would you like to sit with Santa and tell me what you want for Christmas?" The girl looked up at him with wide eyes. "You're Santa?" "I am," James nodded. "But you look like my daddy," she whispered with sudden excitement. James felt his heart squeeze as the girl climbed onto his lap without hesitation. Her mother, standing nearby, wiped a tear from her eye and mouth. Thank you to James. By the end of the first week, James had settled into a comfortable routine. He arrived early each morning to put on his costume, greeted the staff with a hearty ho ho ho, and spent his day listening to children's wishes. Some asked for toys or games. Others had simpler requests, for Daddy to come home from the army, or for Mommy to stop being sick. James listened to each one with care. Diane, the mall manager, stopped by on Friday afternoon with good news. Photo sales are up 40% from last year, she told him during his break, and the store owners say foot traffic has increased too. Whatever magic you're working, keep it up. James sipped his coffee, careful not to get any on his beard. No magic, just listening. That weekend brought the biggest crowds yet. Parents drove from neighboring towns after hearing about the Santa who really listens. One father approached James after his daughter's turn. I just wanted to say thank you, the man said quietly. My Emily is shy, hasn't spoken to Santa in 3 years, but she talked to you. These moments made the long hours worth it. By Sunday evening, James's feet ached and his voice was hoarse from hundreds of Merry Christmas wishes, but his heart felt full. On Monday morning, a local reporter from the Oak Ridge Gazette appeared. She took photos and asked James a few questions about how he approached the role. Children deserve to be heard, he told her simply. That's all I'm doing, listening to them and making them feel important, even if just for a minute. The story ran the next day with the headline, Oak Ridge Mall Santa brings new magic to holiday season. The photo showed James with a child on each knee, his dark face bright with laughter against the white beard. The children's joy was plain to see. So called him that evening, excited. Dad, you're famous. My friends are all talking about you. James laughed. Hardly famous. Just doing my job. Well, people are noticing. My math teacher even mentioned it in class. After hanging up, James sat at his kitchen table and reviewed the list of special requests he'd collected. A boy who wanted a book about space. A girl who needed new winter boots. A family struggling after a fire. James had started quietly noting these cases, planning to help where he could with his Santa earnings. As he prepared for bed that night, James felt a sense of purpose he hadn't expected from this temporary job. For the first time in years, Christmas felt truly magical again, not just for the children he met, but for himself too. Tomorrow would bring more children, more wishes, more chances to create small moments of joy. What James didn't know was that tomorrow would also bring the first real test of his role as Oak Ridge's new Santa. The Saturday before Christmas was always the busiest day at Oak Ridge Mall. By noon, the line for Santa stretched past the food court. James had been taking photos with excited children since the mall opened, his smile never faltering despite his tired legs. Santa, I want a skateboard and a robot dog and new shoes that light up when I walk, said a freckled boy named Kevin, barely taking a breath between words. That's quite a list, James chuckled, his deep voice carrying the warmth that had made him so popular. Have you been good this year? Kevin nodded eagerly. Super good. Ask my mom. James looked up to see Kevin's mother smiling, but his attention was drawn to a small group of adults standing just beyond the candy cane fence that surrounded Santa's workshop. They were pointing and speaking in loud whispers. One man in a green jacket seemed particularly upset, his face red as he gestured toward James. Maria, the elf photographer, noticed too. She quickly took Kevin's photo and ushered the next child forward, her eyes darting nervously toward the group. The little girl had just settled on James's lap when the man in the green jacket stepped over the low fence. Excuse me, he called out loudly, causing several people in line to turn. I need to speak to whoever's in charge here. Diane, the mall manager, appeared quickly. Sir, please step back behind the barrier. You're disrupting Santa's visitors. That's exactly what I want to talk about, the man said, his voice carrying through the decorated area. This isn't right. This isn't Santa. James felt his stomach tighten, but kept his focus on the little girl. What would you like for Christmas, sweetheart? He asked gently. My daughter was looking forward to seeing Santa all week, the man continued, now joined by 3 others. And we get here and find this. Santa isn't supposed to look like that. It's confusing the children. Diane's voice dropped to a stern whisper. Sir, If you have concerns, we can discuss them privately in my office. No, this needs to be addressed now, a woman with the group added. We've been coming to this mall for Santa photos for years. This isn't tradition. This isn't right. James could feel his heart pounding, but maintained his composure as the little girl on his lap looked up at him with worried eyes. Is something wrong, Santa? She asked. Nothing's wrong, James assured her. Now, what would you like for Christmas? More parents were pulling their children from the line now, some joining the angry group, others simply leaving to avoid the scene. The security guard on duty approached cautiously but seemed uncertain what to do. We want a real Santa, a man in the green jacket demanded. We want to speak to whoever made this decision. Diane stood her ground. Sir, this is our Santa for this season. James is doing an excellent job, and we've had wonderful feedback from families. James? The man scoffed. So he's not even trying to be Santa. This is ridiculous. I want to talk to the mall owner. By now, several families had stepped forward from the line. My kids are waiting to see Santa, one mother said firmly. You're ruining their experience. That's our point. The woman with the group shot back. This isn't the real experience. Santa has always been, traditional. James gently helped the little girl down from his lap after Maria took their photo. He stood up, his full height impressive in the Santa suit. Folks, he said calmly, his deep voice carrying authority. This is supposed to be a happy place for children. Let's not spoil their day. The security guard finally found his courage. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the Santa area if you can't keep your voices down. We have a right to complain, the man in the green jacket insisted. This mall is catering to political correctness instead of keeping traditions. My kids expect to see a real Santa, not this version. Phone cameras were out now, recording the confrontation. Some children had begun to cry, confused by the angry adults. Diane stepped between James and the group. That's enough. Security, please escort these people from this area now. As the security guard moved to act, James wondered if his time as Santa was about to end before Christmas had even arrived. James sat in Diane's office, still wearing his Santa suit but with the beard pulled down around his neck. His hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. It was Sunday morning, and the mall wouldn't open for another hour. The videos are everywhere, Diane said, turning her laptop so James could see. On the screen, shaky phone footage showed yesterday's confrontation from different angles. One clip had over 50,000 views already. Oak Ridge Mall was trending on local social media. The comments ranged from outrage at the racist shoppers to people defending traditional Santa. Some threatened to boycott the mall, while others pledged to bring their children specifically to support James. I'm sorry this happened, James said quietly. Maybe it would be better if. Don't you dare say quit, Diane interrupted. That's exactly what those people want. The office door opened, and Maria walked in with several printed emails. More messages from the website, she said, placing them on Diane's desk. About half are complaints, half are support. James rubbed his temples. I didn't mean to cause all this trouble. I just needed the extra money for Zoe's college fund. You didn't cause anything, Diane insisted. Those ignorant people did. James's phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Dad, are you ok? My friends are sharing videos of what happened. Call me. His heart sank. He hadn't told her about the incident, hoping to spare her the details. Now she was seeing it online like everyone else. The mall owners called an emergency meeting, Diane continued. They're concerned about negative publicity during the busiest shopping week of the year. What are they saying? James asked, though we could guess the answer. Maria looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Some of them think we should bring in a different Santa, Diane admitted, to calm things down. James nodded slowly. He had expected this. I understand. But I told them absolutely not, Diane added quickly. I said if James goes, I go too. He's the best Santa we've ever had. The photo sales prove it. The children already know him now, Maria agreed. It would confuse them if Santa suddenly changed. Outside the office, they could hear the mall's maintenance crew getting ready for opening. Christmas music played softly through the speakers. James thought about all the children waiting to see him today. He thought about the ones who had lit up when they saw a Santa who looked like them. He thought about the little girl from yesterday whose visit had been ruined. What about security? He asked. If those people come back? We've hired 2 additional guards, Diane said. And we've created a new policy. Anyone disrupting Santa's workshop will be immediately escorted from the premises. James's phone rang. It was his principal from school. I should take this, he said, stepping outside the office. James, his principal said when he answered. I've seen the videos. Are you all right? I'm fine, James replied, though he wasn't sure if that was true. The school board has been receiving calls, she continued. Some parents are concerned about having a teacher who's at the center of a controversy. James closed his eyes, leaning against the wall. Now his regular job might be at risk too. What are you going to do? She asked. It was a question James had been asking himself all night. The easy thing would be to walk away. Give up the Santa job, let things calm down, avoid the stares and whispers. But then he remembered the faces of the children who had sat on his lap. The ones who told him their deepest wishes, the ones who saw themselves in him. I'm going to be Santa, he said firmly, because that's what I promised those kids. After hanging up, James walked back into Diane's office. Both women looked at him expectantly. If it's still my choice, he said, I'd like to stay, at least until Christmas. The children deserve that. Diane smiled with relief. Santa's workshop opens in 45 minutes. We better get ready. As James adjusted his beard and hat in the mirror, he wondered what new challenges today would bring. Monday morning arrived with a surprising twist. When James parked his car at the far end of the mall lot as usual, he noticed something unusual near the entrance. People were gathering, dozens of them, carrying colorful signs. What now? He muttered, his stomach tightening as he grabbed his duffel bag containing parts of his Santa costume. As he approached, a woman spotted him. There he is, she called out. James froze, preparing for another confrontation, but then the crowd began to applaud. A tall man stepped forward, extending his hand. Mr. Wilson, I'm Pastor Michael from Community Baptist. We're here to support you. James looked at the signs now. All Santas welcome here. Love comes in every color. We stand with Santa James. I don't understand, James said, shaking the pastor's hand. After what happened Saturday, a few of us church leaders got together, Pastor Michael explained. We decided this wasn't just about Santa, it's about what kind of community we want to be. A woman in a hijab approached. I'm Fatima, from the Islamic Center. My children don't celebrate Christmas, but they know kindness when they see it. What those people did was wrong. James felt a lump forming in his throat as more people introduced themselves. Teachers, firefighters, small business owners, and families from across Oak Ridge. Diane rushed out from the mall entrance. James, have you seen what's? She stopped when she saw the crowd. Oh, you've met our welcoming committee. Inside, James discovered the mall had transformed overnight. Colorful paper chains made by local school children hung from the ceiling. A large poster board stood near Santa's workshop, already covered with supportive messages. The first grade class at Lincoln Elementary made this for you, Maria said, handing James a stack of handmade cards. Their teacher brought them by earlier. As the mall opened, James settled into his big red chair, unsure what to expect. To his amazement, the line formed quickly, longer than any previous day. A local news van pulled up outside. The reporter, a young woman named Tasha Williams, approached Diane for permission to film. That's up to Santa, Diane replied. James agreed to a brief interview during his lunch break. I'm just here for the children, he told Tasha. Christmas should be about joy, not division. The segment aired on the evening news and spread quickly online. By Tuesday morning, families were driving from neighboring towns specifically to visit James. We drove 2 hours to see you, one mother told him as her son settled on his lap. He saw you on TV and said you were the real Santa. Not everyone was supportive. A small group of protesters still gathered daily at the edge of the parking lot. Some shoppers still turned away when they saw him, but they were increasingly outnumbered by supporters. On Wednesday, Mrs. Jackson's third grade class, from the same school where James taught, arrived wearing red hats and singing carols. They presented him with a giant thank you card. Mr. Wilson is the best teacher, one boy told anyone who would listen. So of course he's the best Santa too. By Thursday, the mall had to create a ticketing system to manage the Santa line. Local restaurants began donating lunch for James and the elf staff. Someone even created a hashtag Santa James, that was gaining traction beyond Oak Ridge. That evening, James received a call from a national morning show. They wanted to interview him live via satellite. "I'm not looking for fame," he told Diane when she encouraged him to accept. "This isn't about fame," she replied. "It's about showing people what matters at Christmas." When James arrived home that night, exhausted but heartened, he found Zoe waiting up for him. "Dad, look at this," she said, showing him her phone. A compilation video titled "Black Santa Brings Joy Despite Racism" had millions of views. "You're making a difference." James smiled tiredly. "I'm just being Santa, honey." "No," Zoe said seriously. "You're being something most people never have the courage to be, yourself, even when it's hard." As James hung up his Santa suit, he realized something important had shifted. What had started as a simple job had become something much more meaningful, not just for him, but for an entire community discovering its better self during the Christmas season. Friday afternoon brought steady rain to Oak Ridge, but the weather didn't shorten the line for Santa James. Parents and children huddled under umbrellas in the covered walkway outside the mall, waiting patiently for their turn. James had just finished a visit with twin boys who wanted matching skateboards when Maria whispered in his ear. "There's a special situation coming up," she said quickly. "Parents want to talk to you first." James nodded, taking a quick sip of water while Maria went to bring the family forward. He noticed a couple approaching with a small girl who was rocking back and forth, her hands pressed firmly over her ears. "Thank you for seeing us," the father said quietly. "I'm David, this is my wife Lena, and our daughter Emma." Lena knelt beside Emma, speaking softly. "Remember what we practiced, sweetie? This is a busy place with lots of noises." James recognized the signs immediately. His nephew had similar sensitivities. "Would Emma be more comfortable if we turned the Christmas music down?" James asked. Lena looked up in surprise. "You understand?" "My nephew has sensory processing challenges too," James explained. "Sometimes small adjustments make a big difference." David seemed to relax slightly. "Emma has been preparing for this visit for months. She has autism, and new situations can be overwhelming for her. But she desperately wants to meet Santa." "We've been practicing what to say," Lena added. She memorized her whole list. "With the crowds and the noise." James stood up from his chair. "Maria, could you ask them to turn the music down for a few minutes? And maybe create a little space here?" Maria quickly arranged for the music volume to be reduced. The next families in line were asked to step back slightly, creating a calmer area around Santa's chair. James knelt down to Emma's eye level, keeping a comfortable distance. "Hello, Emma," he said gently. "I'm Santa. It's very nice to meet you." Emma kept her hands over her ears but peeked at James from behind her fingers. "You're not white," she observed matter-of-factly. Her parents looked mortified, but James just smiled. "That's right. Santa can look many different ways." "Like my daddy's friend Marcus who helps fix our car," Emma said. "He has a beard too, but his is black, not white like yours." "Exactly," James nodded. "Would you like to sit on that chair instead of my lap?" He pointed to a small stool beside his throne. "Sometimes I get tired of people sitting on me all day." This brought a small smile to Emma's face. She nodded and carefully sat on the stool, lowering her hands from her ears now that the environment was calmer. "I have practiced what to tell you," she announced formally. "I have 3 things I want for Christmas." "I'm listening very carefully," James assured her. Emma took a deep breath. "First, I want a telescope because I like stars and planets. Second, I want books about dinosaurs with real facts, not baby books. Third." She hesitated, looking at her parents. "It's okay, Emma," her mother encouraged. "You can tell Santa your special wish too." "Third," Emma continued, her voice softer now, "I want kids at school to stop saying I'm weird. I want a friend." James felt his heart tighten. He glanced at Emma's parents, who were both blinking back tears. "Those are excellent wishes, Emma," James said thoughtfully. "The telescope and dinosaur books I can definitely help with. The third wish is trickier because Santa can't change how other people behave." Emma's face fell slightly. "But," James continued, I know something about feeling different. Sometimes when people see someone different, they just need time to understand. And you know what? The best people, the ones who make the very best friends, are the ones who can see past differences. Emma considered this seriously. Like how you look different from the Santa in movies, but you're still good at being Santa. James smiled widely. Exactly like that. When it was time for the photo, Emma surprised everyone by standing right next to James's chair and giving a small but genuine smile. As Maria captured the moment, James realized this visit might be the most important one of his entire season. Saturday morning, James woke to his phone buzzing repeatedly. Half asleep, he reached for it, expecting an early message from Diane about mall preparations. Instead, he found dozens of notifications, missed calls, and texts from people he hadn't heard from in years. Dad. Zoe burst into his bedroom without knocking. You're everywhere. Look. She thrust her phone in front of his face. On the screen was a video of him with Emma from yesterday. The caption read, Black Santa shows what Christmas spirit really means. What? James sat up quickly. How did this get online? Emma's parents posted it last night, Zoe explained. They included the whole story about how you made special arrangements for her. It's been shared over 100,000 times already. James watched the video with growing concern. It showed his interaction with Emma, how he'd knelt to her level, offered the stool instead of his lap, and their conversation about differences. The video ended with Emma's genuine smile for the photo. Her mom wrote this really touching post about how you were the first Santa who truly saw Emma. Zoe continued excitedly. People are loving it. James's phone rang again. This time it was Diane. Have you seen it? She asked immediately when he answered. Just now, James replied. I had no idea they were recording. They asked permission from mall security, Diane explained. I just didn't think it would blow up like this. James, we've received calls from 3 national news programs. They want to interview you. By the time James arrived at the mall, a small crowd of reporters had gathered at the entrance. Security guards kept them outside while James slipped in through a service door. This is crazy, he told Maria as they prepared the Santa area. All I did was treat a child with respect. That's exactly why it's going viral, Maria replied. People are calling you the Santa who listens and the Santa who cares. After all the ugliness from last week, this story is hitting differently. The mall opened, and James took his place. The line formed quickly, even longer than before. Many families mentioned seeing the video. Some had printed screenshots of supportive comments to add to the message board. During his lunch break, James checked his phone again. Emma's mother had posted an update. We are overwhelmed by the response to our video. Emma has watched it dozens of times and says Santa James is her friend now. For a child who struggles to connect, this is a Christmas miracle. Thank you for the kind messages. And to those asking, yes, this is the same mall Santa who faced harassment last week. Character shows in how you treat others when no one is watching, or when everyone is watching. The post had thousands of comments, almost all positive. News websites had picked up the story. One headline read, After facing racism, Black Mall Santa shows true Christmas spirit. James received a text from his principal. Board meeting went well. Unanimous support for you. Some parents are actually requesting their children be placed in your class next year because of your compassion. By mid-afternoon, the national attention was becoming overwhelming. A producer from Morning America called, asking James to appear on Monday's show. A children's book publisher left a message about a possible Santa story based on his experience. What should I do? James asked Diane during a short break. This wasn't what I signed up for. What did you sign up for? She asked gently. James thought for a moment. To earn some extra money, to make kids happy. And you've done both, Diane pointed out. But you've also done something more important. You've shown people what really matters at Christmas. As James prepared to return to his chair, a familiar face appeared in line, the man in the green jacket who had led the confrontation the previous weekend. This time, he wasn't angry. He looked uncomfortable, even embarrassed. Beside him stood a little girl holding his hand tightly. James took a deep breath, straightened his hat, and prepared to face whatever came next. Christmas Eve arrived with a light dusting of snow over Oak Ridge, the first white Christmas the town had seen in years. The mall would close early today at 4 p.m., giving everyone time to return home for holiday celebrations. James arrived for his final day as Santa with mixed feelings. The past week had been a whirlwind since Emma's video went viral. He had appeared briefly on Morning America via video call, telling viewers simply, "I'm just trying to bring joy to children. That's what Santa does." The mall had never been busier. Families had driven from 3 states away to meet the real Santa, as many children now called him. But today would be different. Today was about closing this unexpected chapter in his life. Diane met him at the service entrance, helping carry a large sack. "What's all this?" James asked. "Special deliveries," she replied with a smile. "You'll see." The man in the green jacket, James now knew his name was Robert, had returned twice more during the week. The first visit had been awkward, with Robert mumbling an apology while his daughter visited Santa. The second time, he had waited until closing and approached James privately. "I was wrong," Robert had admitted. "My daughter kept asking why I was mad at Santa. I didn't have a good answer. Made me think about what I was really teaching her." Now, as James settled into his chair one last time, he saw familiar faces throughout the line. Children he had met over the past month, returning for one final Christmas wish. Maria handed him a clipboard. "Special list for today," she explained. "Some kids need extra attention." James reviewed the names: children from struggling families, children with special needs, children spending their first Christmas without a parent. Next to each name were notes about their situation and a number corresponding to packages in the special deliveries sack. "I don't understand," James said. Diane smiled. "Remember all those interview requests you turned down? Well, several companies offered sponsorships instead. When they couldn't get you on camera, they decided to support your work another way." The first child approached, a boy named Miguel, whose family had lost everything in an apartment fire last month. "Santa remembers you, Miguel," James said warmly. "And Santa has something special just for you." From the sack, James pulled a wrapped package. Miguel's eyes widened as he opened it to find a new winter coat and the exact robot he had wished for during his previous visit. "How did you remember?" Miguel whispered in amazement. "Santa always remembers," James replied. Throughout the day, similar scenes unfolded. Children who had shared their deepest wishes weeks ago found that Santa had somehow remembered every detail. Parents watched in tearful gratitude as James transformed wishful thinking into reality. At 3:30 p.m., with the mall preparing to close, Emma and her parents returned. She walked confidently to James without covering her ears. "Hello, Santa James," she said clearly. "I came to say Merry Christmas and thank you." "Thank you too, Emma," James replied. "You helped Santa teach many people about kindness." Emma presented him with a drawing, a night sky filled with stars and 2 figures looking through a telescope. One was small, the other wore a red suit with a white beard. "This is us looking at stars with my new telescope," she explained. "And look." She pointed to where she had drawn herself holding hands with another child. "I made a friend at school. Her name is Lily. She saw me on the computer with you and said I was cool." As the final minutes of James's time as Santa ticked away, the mall staff gathered around his chair. Diane stepped forward with an envelope. "The mall owners asked me to give you this," she said. "It's an offer for next Christmas. Same role, better pay, and a scholarship fund in Santa James's name for local children." James opened the envelope with shaking hands. The contract was real, as was the scholarship information. "We want you back," Diane said simply. "You changed Christmas in Oak Ridge." Outside the mall windows, the snow continued to fall. Children laughed, parents smiled, and holiday music played softly. James looked around at the diverse faces, watching him expectantly. "Santa needs to make his deliveries tonight," James said with a wink to the children, "but he promises to return next year." As he stood to leave, the entire crowd, shoppers, mall employees, even security guards, broke into applause. James Wilson, the teacher who had only wanted to earn extra money for his daughter's college fund, had given his community something much more valuable, a new understanding of what Christmas truly meant. In his heart, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new Oak Ridge tradition, one where Santa looked different on the outside, but carried the same timeless message of kindness, inclusion, and love.